And I've got out of the habit of looking to other people for accountability. I was always one of those going, oh, I want an accountability partner. No, just crack on and do what needs doing. Just because someone sat next to you doesn't make the work any more difficult or time consuming or easy or whatever.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter. Today Jo is interviewing Colette Mason. Jo and Colette met when they were both supporting at an event, and they separately met again at an internet marketer's lunch. They keep in touch via social media and a mutual friend. Colette loves to help budding authors succeed. She is a corporate landscapie, and these days she works privately with motivated clients who are serious about living up to their potential and relish the prospect of becoming a published author. She helps them create detailed book outlines, supports them as they write their first draft, and with the help from her team of expert editors, she publishes a high-quality book which meets traditional publishing standards without the restrictions and hassles that come with signing your ideas away to someone else. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Colette Mason of letstellyourstory.com. So hi Colette, thanks for joining me.
Hi there.
So we've known each other for ages, and we actually have a mutual friend, and I couldn't remember when I knew that he was going to be seeing you how we knew each other, but then I did a bit of social media tracking down and worked out that we completely randomly knew each other separately to the Kent thing, which is what I thought, because you're not from Kent at all, are you?
No, I'm not. No.
So so it was great to sort of reconnect via someone else and invite you on the show. So tell us a bit more about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Okay, my name is Colette, as Jo's mentioned. I live in London, inside the M25, the bullseye of the dartboard of the world, as I like to call it. And I'm a massive nerd. I'm really into my music. I particularly like cars and doing road trips. So you'll often see me uploading a picture of me doing things. And when I'm not doing fun stuff, I also help. That makes it sound boring, doesn't it? When I'm not doing fun stuff, I also help people create non-fiction books and how they can package up their expertise and help more people. Really, that's what I get quite excited about work-wise. Lovely. And where do you work? Do you have a home office? Do you work out and about in that car? Bit of both. It is. I tend to just sit on the settee in the lounge, which isn't really a good idea. I do need to sort out a better place to do work. I did have a desk, and then it sort of got covered with books and gadgets and leads and stuff, and now it just looks like it doesn't look like a desk anymore. So I've got to resurrect that at some point. And sometimes I go to coffee shops, because I kind of like having other people around me. It can be a bit isolating at home. Over time it gets a bit lonely, so I nip out and people watch and things, and that sort of thing. Sometimes I go around people's houses and we sort of blitz something together as well. I do a bit of that, so that's how it works. I did try having an office, but it didn't really work out. I didn't use it enough, so I came back home to the settee. I think you've probably been the most honest of my guests mentioning your settee, because I'm sure a lot of us, I certainly work all around my house in all sorts of different places, but I suppose if I was officially asked, I wouldn't always admit to that. Oh, right. I have an armchair in my office, so I have to say that I do end up sitting on that quite a lot as well. It's all about what works for you, isn't it? Yes. I think one thing I have done that might be different to other people is because I'm a bit nerdy. I've got like an inverter for my car, so I can charge my laptop up in the car with the 3-point socket, and so I can actually last 48 hours with all my batteries and stuff. I can last 48 hours without seeing a power socket. So I'm always thinking I should sit in my tent in a forest somewhere and do very creative, deep thinking work and write it down. But I haven't got round to that yet. But that's the big plan, with my mobile power supplies,
Well, I spent a lot of time in my caravan this summer using solar power, using my inverter, so that worked well. And at Christmas, I launched a course, an online course, pretty much written whilst we travelled to and from skiing. So I did say that ideally I could do with a long distance lorry driver friend, and I could just sort of sit in the cab driving around the country, getting my work done. So we've got lots in common. Maybe we should go on a road trip.
Yeah, I've got a slow cooker for the car. I've gone pretty full on in the car.
Oh, you've beaten me there.
Yeah. Quite sad, isn't it? Still, there we are.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about why you do what you do, because you're doing different stuff, I think, to when we first met. And a bit like me, I guess you've probably had a few iterations. So tell me more about why you do what you do.
Yeah, I've had lots of iterations. I've only had like a permanent job for 11 months since 1996. So I've done lots of different things. I wasn't chained to the usual model, which was great. It gave me a lot of variety. And what I'm helping people with these days is helping them publish their books. I'm a bit of a stickler. I only help up to 10 people a year because it's quite a personal commitment for me and the person, and I always want to make sure that whatever we do is just as good as if you've gone to a traditional publisher. I think a lot of people think you're a bit of a loser if you self-publish your book, and quite frankly most of the people are losers who self-publish their book because they don't, it's like, oh well, I make a fish finger sandwich for lunch. That's fine for you personally, but it's not necessarily what you should give other people to showcase your ability as a chef, kind of thing. And I think a lot of people kind of get the book out there and it's a bit not very, I'll paraphrase, not very good, because they've never done it before and they make rookie mistakes and it ends up, oh, I'll fix it on the second edition. You can't really do that with a book. It's got to be right first time. Everybody else does it right first time, and unfortunately you have to do the same thing. So it was like, well, how can I help people do it quickly and well without them wanting to stab themselves in the eyes? And that's how I started. I did my own first book back in 2011 because I'm a bit nerdy. And I was interested in working out, well, how does this work? It's got to be like printing something out of my printer at home or printing business cards. It's got to be something like that. So how do I actually make a book in a physical format? So I started off with my own, and then I got some crazy friends who seemed to have lots of information kicking around on their hard disk. And I said, why don't we turn that into a thing? And they're going, well, they swore at me, and I went, no, we're still going to turn it into a thing. And both of those went on to do pretty well. One was about Egyptology, and one was about the safe and healthy way to keep chickens around your house and be a bit of a smallholder. So they're very different topics. So those are the first two that I did. Probably in about 2012 they came out, and then it festered for a bit because I thought, do I really want to do this? I've done two. I've kind of stuck my flag in the top of Everest. The personal glory is gone. Do I still want to do this, or do I want to do something else? But I stuck with it, and I've done I did 13 books in the last 15 months, which is probably why I've got a twitch and a nervous condition. But I thought, yeah, I'll do this because it's worth seeing what it can do for other people. I don't do them for myself anymore, but I do them for how the other person feels. That's the good bit. Some of them fill up a little bit. They have a bit of allergy issues when the book arrives in the post because they're so proud of themselves for finishing it. And I guess that's the ultimate, the nub of why I do it now, is to help them be the best they can be, not in that way, but in a really good way, so they can help more people.
Yeah. So it strikes me from what you said that some of what you do is about making it sort of work for you in terms of all that variety and so on. How do you make that happen? You've already said you put some boundaries around how many books you can actually, or how many people you can work with to create those books. How do you? I know you have quite an active life in terms of your interest. So how do you balance the two? How do you? Or I always hate balance. I don't know why I come up with it. It's like one of those words that you think you should use, but actually I don't ever think it's a balance. I think it's an integration. So how do you sort of prioritize what you're doing between that work and what you want to do in your life as well? You're traveling around with your inverter and your slow cooker.
Basically, I manage it really badly, very, very, very badly. I get burnt out. I do too much. I have to have a rest. I hate having a rest. I want to do more. And I get in a vicious circle. I'm very conscious that you don't live for very long. That's one thing that makes me use all the time that I've got as best as I can. I'm not one of those people, burn your TV. I'm not one of those people. If you want to watch a documentary and learn something, then do it. But don't just watch a science fiction box set for 40 hours. It's not necessarily the best use of your life. So I am super busy, and I just try and make it be the best it can possibly be. I get variety from the work because books include lots of things. There's design, there's a bit of mentoring, and putting the arm around the shoulder of somebody or kicking them up the backside to get something finished. So there's a lot of variety in that bit of work, rather than if I was building a database or something. There's not much variety in that, but whereas books have got a lot more scope for variety. So that was one of the reasons why I thought I would pick it. But I don't really have any leisure time. I'm lucky that I love computers, so actually doing what I do feels like a break, fortunately. But I want to do less. That's why I've dropped down to 10 books a year, and why I'm doing group coaching now, so I can help more than 10 people, and I can get my life back. So I might drop 10 down to 5. We'll see. I'm in the lucky position that I don't have to work anymore if I don't want to. I've got we'll call it F off money, I'll paraphrase. So if I don't want to do something, if I want to take a short break, then I can, although I've never kind of mastered that yet. I still keep doing 18-hour days and getting a bad cough.
Yeah. It does strike me that whilst you say you manage it badly, there's quite a lot of intentionality behind what you're doing and how you're organising time.
Yes, I'm one of those people who uses Trello. I use Asana. I use lots of tools to track what I'm doing, make sure they get done. To free up my own head, because once you've written it down, it's not blocking up your head, and you can make better decisions with the task in hand. And also it holds me accountable and stops me from drifting. And I've got out of the habit of looking to other people for accountability. I was always one of those going, I want an accountability partner. No. Just crack on and do what needs doing. Just because someone's sat next to you doesn't make the work any more difficult or time consuming or easy or whatever. You've just got a mascot sat next to you effectively. So just get rid of the mascot and do the work. And that was quite a revelation for me. It was like, well, if you want to do it, you do it. And if you don't, well, that's your fault, isn't it? It sounds harsh, but yeah.
So how do you reconcile that sort of flexibility with that structure? Because I'm quite similar as well. I think I have a lot of structure to what I do, but I also I feel quite often that I make things up as I go along, but that's just a sort of self-deprecating sort of comment for actually being intentional, as you've said, about what I want to do and doing the things that I want to do. So how, when you're a flexible person, how do you sort of reconcile using those structures?
One of the things is I book a lot of things in advance. So I've already got like 4 holidays. They sound really exotic. One's on a coach holiday, but I've got 4 holidays booked up for the next 6 months. So then I've got to have a break then, because it's booked in and it's paid for, and I can tell everyone I'm disappearing then, I'm going to go and do something fun. So that's one thing that I use. Yeah. Another thing is, if I don't like doing something, I try and do it as quickly as possible so that I can then go and do something fun, and I use the fun thing as a reward. And I get a lot of a kick out of being productive. So I quite enjoy getting things finished and crossed off, and that in and of itself is a nice feeling to have. That's another thing that might be useful is I've swapped my time around completely. So people look at me like I'm possessed or something, but I go to bed at about 7:30 at night, and I get up at 4 in the morning, so I can be up at 4, watch a little bit of Coronation Street, do a stretch, 2 things at once, and then I'll go to the gym. I'm back at 7 o'clock, so I've got a lot of that kind of fitness and balance in life stuff done before 7 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. And then if I get blown a bit off course in the day, I've still done some quite good things before the day's over. So that's it. Yeah, but people in the summer, that's pretty hard, going to sleep when it's light. But now it's getting darker in the evenings, it's not so much of a burden going to bed. But at night, I just want to eat, drink, have cheese and biscuits, watch a load of duff stuff on the TV. So I just make myself be asleep then, because then I can't be wasting time with empty evening stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love it. Not something I could ever do, go to bed that early, but I do love the concept of sort of displacement activity in a positive way.
Yeah. I don't really
Yeah.
have anybody to look after. I've got no kids or anything like that. I've got a husband, but I've got no kids, so I can do whatever I like. He can do whatever he likes in his own time, sort of thing. So I haven't got that. I haven't got anybody else's structure like school run or something influencing what I have to do when.
Yeah. So you talked about some apps around things like Asana and so on. What other tools and apps do you use? Being a bit of a techie geek, as you said, so there should be a list here, should there?
All right, I've got about 250 apps on the phone. It's my
yes, like mine.
So what have I got on here that's pretty useful tools wise? I've been using Zapier quite a bit. I've got the paid version, so I can chain multiple things together. So that's quite cool, because I did try using an assistant, and lovely as the assistant was, it was always it felt like a weak link. I wasn't sure I'd picked exactly the right person for the role, or maybe there were several roles and one person couldn't do all of it. Perhaps there was a bit of that. So I started looking at how I could automate stuff and not rely on a person, and Zapier's been really good for that. I've really enjoyed it. And LastPass has been another one that I use a lot for sharing passwords with people. That's been another really good tool. I use an app I've got an Android phone these days. I used to have an iPhone, but I use a tool called App Block, which lets me say how many minutes a day I can use different applications for. So if I'm going to be traveling on a train and having a bit of fun, I might let myself have 2 hours of Facebook a day. But I've knocked that down for like an hour a day. I'll do 15 minutes of BBC News a day. So I've stopped myself wasting time on the phone, and I've called some of my groups on the phone time waster, and all the things that are time sinks, all those apps live in there, and I've made it pink. I'm not very girly, so I've made the icon, the group pink, so I really don't want to click on it, and that's been pretty good for productivity. It's a bit out there, I know, but that's been quite useful. And I got a tablet. Another thing I did was I got a tablet. So if the phone's a bit small for doing work on, and a computer means you can get sucked into doing full-on work, so having a tablet meant I had a big enough screen to be able to work, but I couldn't do everything, so I had to keep delegating, and I couldn't say, I know how to do it best, I'm going to do all of it. Although you can't with the tablet because you're a bit hobbled. Although I've got a workaround. I can take remote control of my computer using TeamViewer, so I can access all my stuff if I needed to and just leave the computer on at home. But that's been quite a useful little tool for productivity and still getting things done. I can give people feedback, but I can't be at the coalface. So
that was a great idea, as you say, to be connected. In some ways we might be twins. I've done a similar thing for the same reason. Got a big screen on my phone, and then realised it wasn't quite big enough, and did the same. Got the iPad, and tend to use that as much as possible, and only use the laptop for the things that absolutely can't be done on the iPad. But just to think about it in terms of what needs to then be delegated actually is the next step on. So I'll be thinking on. Thank you. So you talked about other people helping you to get stuff done, and Zapier or Zapier, or however we all pronounce it, is something I use as well. And do you use IFTTT as well?
I have done, yes. But I kind of liked using Zapier because it integrated with more things like personally, Xero drives me round the bend, the accountancy software. I find it desperately difficult to use because I don't really understand accountancy lingo and all. So I thought, great, I understand Zapier. I could use a tool that's going to help me put my expenses in onto the soft. So that was another thing about it as well. You learnt how to use that one tool, and you could save doing boring stuff with a lot of other tools that you didn't really like very much. I don't like going in email. I only check my emails once a day. People are horrified at that. And I look at some other people's phones and it bings all the time. I think, how do you live like that? How do you live? I can be talking to someone for 10 minutes and they've had 15 bings on the phone. I'd just jump under a bus. I think to hell with it all. So that was another good way. It meant I didn't have to keep checking all these different places and doing boring admin and getting boring important notifications. It all went to Slack and stuff like that. So I could cut out, if I could automate doing stuff that winds me up, that was kind of cool too.
Yeah, I love it. So tell us a bit more about your self-care and how you look after yourself. You already talked about getting up to exercise. Well, not getting up to exercise, getting up so that you can exercise before you do everything else.
Yes.
And you're going to bed early enough to do that. Some people end up going to bed later and getting up earlier and sort of cutting the sleep out in order to get more done. You've swapped it around so that isn't the case. How do you prioritize that, looking after yourself a bit?
I used to be very good at it, I did a lot of courses on personal development, and I became an NLP practitioner and all that kind of thing. And I used to put quite a lot of effort into looking after myself, and then it sort of fell apart because I was looking after an older parent. And those of you who've got older parents who keep falling over and bits of them breaking, that suddenly becomes your priority in life, whether you like it or not. And that put a massive wrecking ball through what I was doing. I was able to do 100-mile bike rides. I was moving 30 tons in an hour down the gym, and I was getting really quite fit and everything. And then this older parent thing happened, and mum lived a long way away from me. So at the drop of a hat, you'd be going 150 miles trying to sort something out. So that kind of put a bit of a wrecking ball. But that's, in a good and a bad way, I don't have that situation anymore. So I can now look after myself again. So I've got stretching apps on the phone. They're quite good. So I can it just makes me do so when I'm watching my Coronation Street. I can still, because I know all of the characters look like and all the interiors in great detail. So I don't need to look at the screen very much. So I could be stretching then. And I think, because I am, I'll be 50 next year. So I am starting to get a bit more inflexible. So that's been quite good. And then I'm a pretty resilient person naturally. I let a lot of things go. I try not to get I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I will not let that slip. But most things I will just let it go, even like the death of a parent. It's like, well, yeah, you are where you are. There's no point festering over it. I'm quite weird in that way, I suppose. Not everybody feels that way. So I just try and be super, not in a denying everything way, but just being super resilient. And okay, well, some bad things have happened. Let's book some fun things in to do instead, and let's look at the good things in life. I tend to look at being positive, and other people come to me because I'm quite good at flipping a negative situation around and making it look good and get the best out of it, or just kicking people at the backside and say, rip the plaster off, get it done, and then relax. So baths are pretty cool. I like doing that. I've got a guilty pleasure. I like going to Poundland, which is a shop in the UK that does lots of bargains, and you can get these little shower caps for your feet that have got moisturizer in. And sometimes if I've done one of my city breaks, and I like walking a half marathon around every place that I visit, which is really mental, but I still do it. And so my feet can get a bit hot and tired at the end of the day. So I'll get a yogurt from Tesco's or something from the supermarket, put my feet in these little shower caps and moisturize them while watching the telly. And that is a guilty pleasure. Not many people know that.
And it's another first. I don't think anyone's ever told me that before.
So I do quite a lot of that. Going away, weekend breaks, I do a lot of that. I get called pikey so much. It's a term for being a bit of a cheapskate, but I think, well, I'd rather shop around, find somewhere that's 30 quid a night to stay that's really nice, and go away quite a bit and have a break from home, and then when you come back to home again, it feels special rather than taking it for granted. But you don't keep hemorrhaging a ton of cash just to have a change of scene. So I do quite a lot of that. I go to Trivago a lot and find a lot of bargains on there and stay somewhere. So that's another thing that I do quite a lot of.
Yeah, lovely. I'm gonna have to send little Doddsy in the direction of those feet shower things, because she's a Poundland fan as well. She's obviously not discovered them yet though.
Yes, the coconut water one is particularly invigorating.
I will tell her. So tell us more about learning and improving yourself. You've said that you've done quite a lot of that in the past. I'm sure I don't think it's something you turn off, is it, as somebody who's interested in that sort of thing? So what are you doing currently to improve and learn?
Well, I'm putting all of my efforts into systemizing what I do. So I've spent quite a lot of time working out how to automate things and how to look after a large group of people at once without dropping the quality. And that's just been ad hoc surfing, really, because there has been no time, because I kind of lost 2 years looking after mum. So I'm feeling I need to catch up now. And that is it's like breathing. I have to be doing that all the time. And so everything else has gone out of the way, apart from seeing an odd film or an odd weekend away, if I'm honest. So
how are you approaching that, other than through the automation tools that we've already talked about? What's the sort of process?
Because I'm sort of liking doing it, but I'm also hating doing it. It's a bit like it's like tidying up the garden. It's really grim digging over the soil, but when you sit and have a pina colada in your deck chair, you think, oh, that was worth it. So I'm just thinking the sooner the digging phase is out of the way, the sooner I can sit on the veranda with the pina colada, and that's how I'm managing it. The sooner it's done, the sooner it's done.
Yeah.
No secrets, I'm afraid. Just grind.
What about recommended resources aside from that? Are there any sort of books or podcasts or anything that you're listening to, reading at the moment that you'd recommend?
I tend to listen to music, put music on to get me in the zone, and then you can still be doing stuff while music is on. So I kind of do. I don't really look to other people for advice anymore. I look to my circle of close friends. That sounds like, there's only like 4 of them and I hate everybody else. But I if I've got a problem with X, I'll go and speak to somebody who knows about X. I wasn't very good at asking for help when I was younger, and I would I'd go and find. I think, well, I'll just go and talk to the person and pay for them to fix it, or barter with them to fix it if that works for them or me or whatever. So I tend not to. I've started to realise that when you're reading about doing stuff, you're not actually doing it. And I'm terrible at planning and reading and thinking what if rather than actually doing the thing. So now I've just got a new rule: do the thing. Just stop researching things. Do things. So I guess that's another reason why I've not been looking elsewhere for stuff to be implementing, because I know enough stuff. I've been learning this stuff about running an online business since 2007 probably. If I don't know it now, then Christ, you're never going to know it. So stop reading, start doing.
I'm worse. I just buy the books. I don't even read them.
I do have a few of those upstairs. Yes, the people. Oh, you must read this. It's about productivity, and it's just there in pristine condition, not even a slight crease on the spine.
I think it's the thought that counts, isn't it? Or is that for a different scenario?
Maybe. Yeah. Sometimes I buy the use of resources thinking, well, when I need to know that little bit, somebody said that bit of that book will be good for it. So I've already got quite a lot of things that are going to solve the problems already. So maybe I don't need to look for new stuff right now.
Yeah, cool. So let's just finish off talking a bit about sort of routines and rituals. You've already talked about your going to bed early and getting up early, and you sound like you have quite a sort of regular routine for the mornings. Is that something that you've purposely built in to make stuff happen?
Yes, I've tried going to the gym later in the day, and I've got a very short fuse. I'm like Basil Fawlty. I don't let on very much, but I'm always raging about idiots and situations, if I'm really honest, but I keep it locked up. So anything, later on in the day, there's more of those Basil Fawlty thoughts going on. So that's why I have to start early in the morning. And I tend to knock off work at about 4 o'clock because I'm pretty brain dead by then. So everyone's going, oh, the webinar starts at 8 o'clock in the evening. I think, not for me, it doesn't. I'll catch a replay, or, well, that's that gone, isn't it? So that's another thing. And I've tried Pomodoro, and that's worked pretty well. But I find 25 minutes wasn't really long enough to crack the back of some important tasks. Sometimes you might need a couple of hours to do something, or I'd feel in the zone, and then the phone's beeping at me going, you need a break now. And I'm like, no, I don't. I need a hammer to hit you with. That's what I need. But I think, planning stuff out on a Sunday, it's a bit grim planning stuff out on a Sunday because it makes me dread the week a bit, thinking, oh no, there's that needs doing. So sometimes I plan on a Monday morning, right, let's do the boring stuff first and the fun stuff later on in the week. And that's been quite useful. Saying no has been quite useful, and boundaries as well. Another thing I've done, another system I have put in place, is I've got a bunch of standard responses, because I always used to do a lot of hand wringing about, I can't let that person down. They've sent me a private message on Facebook on Saturday. I must answer it now, or I'll look like a heartless git, And of course you get very very burnt out doing that. So I've got a bunch of things in Google Drive now. So it's like, thanks for sending me this message. Here's a form where you can tell me about what you want to do, and I'll speak to you on Monday. So I've got quite a lot of, it's already proofread and everything, so I'm not sweating over that. I've already decided that is a polite and controlled and measured response to somebody, and that's been pretty useful as well. And I know quite a lot. I've shared that with a lot of people who've gone, oh, I do the hand wringing thing as well. I go, quick, borrow this and make it how you want it to be. And that's been a pretty useful system as well, for especially like the tire kickers and I think I've been thinking about doing this for several years. Can I pick? No, you can't pick my brain about it, because I've had my brain picked till there's nothing left by people who never did the work after I gave them the answer. So see you on Monday, if you can be bothered to fill out the 7-question form. So that's been quite a useful thing. It's quite a nice little screen. If you can't fill out the form, then you're probably not going to do the rest of the work,
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good one. And it's funny, the more I listen to you, being a similar age, I keep thinking, well, I've said recently that whole thing about, we always say about if people could learn wisdom when they were young, and the older I get, the more I wish we could teach it to the young. And I could have known it 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you end up becoming much more discerning through years of not being so and suffering the consequences, and eventually something sort of clicks, doesn't it? And you then sort of realise that there's a better way.
Yeah, maybe I should stop doing that. Yes. I have a lot of those battle scars. So I think that's where the knowledge seeps in. You have so many battle scars from screwing up. Eventually the good ideas can get through the surface of you. Yeah.
So what about if things don't go right? If you have one of those days where it all just goes horribly pear-shaped, how do you deal with that?
Wine, if I'm honest.
Told you we were twins.
I try not to do that as much. I try not to do that because it sort of undoes other good work that I'm doing, like juicing or going to the gym. So I have to stop doing that because it's just a bunch of empty calories, if nothing else. And you still have the same problems the next day. So that's not a very good one. But yeah, sometimes I'll do that. How else do I cope with a bad day? I just fix it. If it's fixable, I fix it. If I can't fix it, I think, well, you are where you are, and move on. So I'm quite dogmatic and black and white about stuff. I try not to beat myself up because my standards are really high. So my idea of a bit crappy and corner cutting is way below, it's way above what other people think is acceptable. So I try and remind myself of that as well. When I hand out stuff that I've made for free, people go, wow, this is better than what I've paid, money for. I'm going, well, is that a good or a bad thing? Is it? I personally, I think it's bad that people are trying to flog horrible stuff, but I suppose it is a compliment in a way. I try and remind myself of, that it is actually probably a lot better. What I've done is probably a lot better than what I think it is. And I'm like everybody, I'm always my toughest critic. If I've impressed me, then blimey, it must be good,
Yeah, exactly.
Curmudgeonly victim Eldrew me was actually impressed with something I did. Wow.
So on a day when you've finished that day knowing that you've done what you want to do, so you've lived more, which is where I talk about doing the things you want to do, not the things that you feel you have to do or you should do. What does that day look like? What have you done?
Probably been with people, been with friends doing something nice, and I would probably have done something cultural, just like I don't watch dead end TV. If I'm doing something in the day, it would probably be an art gallery or a museum or a working farm or something, goodness knows what, but it would always be something constructive and useful that I would have done with the day, probably in eating and drinking something with a nice view. That would probably be involved. I'm terrible for using food and drink as a reward, and I have to remind myself that is not a good idea, but it is quite a lot of fun doing that kind of thing. And I'd probably have achieved something as well, like going to a place I've never been to before, or putting a new playlist on Spotify for a band I've never heard of before, just for a little bit of the day, and then I'll go back to my old favourites. So it would be something new would have happened in a day off or in a reward day, I think, usually.
Lovely. So it's been really good talking to you. You've come up with some, as I said, some real unique ideas and thoughts today, which is great. And some things certainly I'm going to go away and think about a bit more. Particularly, I think that those standard response for your boundaries sort of things, I think is a really, really good one to pull out from there. So thank you so much. And tell people how they can find out more about you and connect with you.
I'm on Facebook. My profile is public these days, so you can. I hate doing that. I hate having a public profile, but it is the way for people to get to know more about you. And if you are who you are, then maybe your profile should be public and not friends only. So you can find me there, Colette Mason, and also letstellyourstory.com is my website where I've got different ways I can help you, and there's lots of free stuff on there. So if you haven't got a budget for your book, you can still get lots of useful advice just from one place.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo.
All this information is available in the show notes on the website if you go to powertolivemore.com/ in this case 81. And the tool that I shared last week is not really a tool, it was the Action for Happiness calendar. So whilst I was recording one of the new podcasts, my guest recommended the calendar, and I thought I'd have a closer look. I'd retweeted it earlier in the month, having seen it, but I hadn't really looked at it that closely, and my guest was suggesting using it as a screensaver, and I've now got it on my iPad Pro, and it looks great. And I do actually, as I sort of click into my iPad in the mornings or switch it on, I do often have a look at the calendar and see what it's telling me I should be doing. And I'm recording this on the 27th of October, and it says today that I should ask myself, will this still matter a year from now? So this is the October calendar, which is Optimistic October. There'll be a new one in November, and I'll download it and switch it over on my iPad as well. So it's working quite well for me now. So it's Optimistic October, as I said. They've had different themes each month since the beginning of the year, so you can pick one that you like or just go along with the one that they're using for that particular month. And if you go to their website as well, I haven't used it, but there is a link that enables you to download the calendar entries directly into your calendar, so you can add them so that they pop up in your actual calendar app as opposed to just on an image. So I thought that was quite cool. So if you go to actionforhappiness.org/optimistic-October, that'll take you through to the calendar. And also, just to let you know, I have started a new, what I was calling a challenge. You might remember in September I did the Avoiding Burnout and Fatigue Challenge, and I was never happy with the word challenge as I was going through the month, but couldn't think of a better word for it. But I've come up with one now, and I'm going to do another one in November. But I'm calling it this time 30 Days of Inspiration. And this time I was thinking about the fact that we're going into Christmas, into the festive period, and how stressful it can be for everybody. So I've decided to focus in November on 30 days of inspiration around how to create calm in your life and your work, so that as you head into the festive season, things perhaps will be less stressful for you because you'll be calm. So if you're wanting to get involved with that, it's basically a weekly post, not a weekly at all, a daily post on my blog, and I send you a daily email to link to it so that you can have a read and decide whether it's something that you want to try or not. As I say, the focus is really on inspiring you to do something differently each day of the month. It certainly shouldn't be onerous, and you don't have to do everything. Obviously, you just choose the bits that really speak to you, that you want to do something about. So if you're interested in finding out more, if you go to powertolivemore.com/creating calm, then you can find out more and sign up there, and then we'll be starting on the 1st of November. And just to remind you again, the show notes for this show are at powertolivemore.com/81. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.